Welcome everyone tonight to Evolve Quest Radio, and we have another great episode. I can't believe how blessed we are every time we have a show. The people that come on, I learn so much from, and I feel really blessed to have, like, they're out there doing their work, they do their research, they find out what works, and they bring it to us, and we share it with you. So we're really fortunate tonight to have Christian and PJ with GTEN Global Trust Education Network tonight. And we've had them on before. They have a seminar coming up in January. They're going to tell you about that. And this is just kind of to let people know that this is available. They're really gifted in their work, and we like to share information that gets people positive results. And, you know, makes it so conflicts are resolved peacefully, you know, in your favor. That's, you know, the focus, I think, of most of our guests' work, you know, just carefully reducing stress and anxiety and removing any conflict and turning it around to a peaceful interaction. So that's our focus tonight. And so I want to welcome my co-host, David Bryson. Welcome, David.
Hey, Jack. Great show you put together. Thank you so much for bringing these guys back. I really look forward to deepening my education on trust law and the administrative process. So, you know, really welcome them, and you know, thanks again so much for putting it together, brother.
Yeah, we are so lucky to have them with us. Yeah, a good fortune. You know, David puts together so many shows. We take turns. It's rare when I get to. Now, I'd like to, before we get into this with Christian and PJ, we have a guest with a good event happened that I spoke about on last week's show on Liberty Aid about, you know, the process that we use stopping a sheriff's sale. And fortunately, this week I heard from that person. I had Joe, and he's here tonight to tell us a little bit about what happened. And I actually haven't heard it directly from him either, so I'm so excited myself. So welcome, Joe. Why don't you tell us, you know, what happened in your situation, please?
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I'm glad to be on here, and actually looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say today. I basically had to turn myself into my own lawyer over the last couple of years because of a foreclosure that I had gone through. I made the mistake of trying to represent myself, you know, in the beginning. Of course, you know, hindsight's 20/20. At 20/20, I've learned a hell of a lot more law since I actually went through the foreclosure, and I tried doing some procedures, and I really have no background in how to make any effect for any of the legal stuff that I've done. And I came across Jack's information and talked to him, and long story short, I had sent out my first validation letter on the 26th of November, and I had 10 more days until the day that the sheriff's sale was going to be performed. And so I kind of thought, well, I don't know, this is so fast, you know, I just kind of was losing faith at that point because I had done a lot of other legal things that I thought, you know, would make a difference. And up till this point, I was able to hold them off for probably about 9 months. And after they already had the first sheriff's sale, but I was to the point where I was almost about to give up. And through Facebook, I found Jack through a friend of mine and talked to him and read over what he had, and he was generous enough to help me out. And I sent out the first validation letter on the 26th of November, and I know that his strategy is, I know with the first validation letter it's 30 days, but we didn't have time for that because I only had 10 days left, so I had changed it to 3 days. And once I had proof in the mailing online that the other party received it, then I made sure and got that second validation notice to them by the third day. And on that day, I also filed the small claims lawsuit to get this into the court. And I didn't want to wait on that because I knew that if I just told the sheriff that, hey, they're not supposed to be doing this, and here's the law, and cite the law to him. I know he's not going to listen because I've already done that with other processes in the past. So after talking to Jeff, I knew that the way to do this would be to file a lawsuit now, that way to get it on record with the court. And apparently it worked. I did the filing. I filed the lawsuit, and the next day I just wrote up a little notice for the sheriff that the loan is in dispute, cited the law, let them know if they continued, they do it knowingly, blah, blah, blah. And I went down to the courthouse the next day to actually file a motion to actually get the judgment on my default foreclosure reversed. While I was down there, I decided, well, I'll check the wall and look at it because they hang all the sheriff sales on the wall. And it had in big pink writing canceled right across right across it. So needless to say, I was very excited at that point. And it just shows how powerful this system is. Like I say, my view is I was at the end of this. I had already got the default judgment. I was basically, thrown to the side already. The only thing left was them just selling the house. And I think that really shows how strong that Jack's strategy is for it to end it. And this ended it literally the day before the sale. So I'm 100% confident now. In fact, in the last 2 days, I went over my credit report and I've sent out 11 of the first verification notices. So I'm going full force with this whole thing. I'm not letting any of these people get away with this stuff anymore. And this seems to be a great way. And then also I've got other law processes that I've done that is only going to help me out and back me up to do further things. So I'm real appreciative of everything that Jack has done for me, and the information he has is just really well put together. I read a lot of the laws and stuff, and I knew a lot about what is in his strategy, but the way it's put together, it's brilliant and it's simple at the same time, and it's really, really obviously effective. So I'm very happy so far with what's been going on.
Joe, that is so nice of you to take the time and come on the show, because I do this work out of a nonprofit, just to make enough to keep the door open and help others, and so
right.
We do appreciate the donations that people give us, and I keep this is personal, private financial information. I never would say who a client is or who donated, nothing about any clients ever to anyone ever. So, to have Joe on tonight to say this, I think, allows others to see that they can stand up against this, seemingly powerful force and just stand in truth, ask for proof, and know they don't have it, and stand in that truth. So I'm glad that we figured out a way that, people can do that. And thank you so much for coming on tonight, Joe. And I recommend, Christian and PJ's work to continue your education, really, because their methods have the same kind of traction, too. So please, stick around and listen, Joe, to this show, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. Thank you for being on.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to listening to you guys. Thanks a lot.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, that was awesome. That happened this week, and just to change the system that radically and still have it get traction, I think really speaks to, how well things are going with it. Looks like we might have just lost David momentarily. But Christian and PJ are here from Global Trust Education Network. And thank you both for being here. Welcome to Evolve Quest. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your upcoming seminar and things that are going on with you all, and fill in our listeners, please.
Thanks. And this is Christian. First, I just want to say hooray. Good, congratulations, Joe. That's good work. It's nice to see when things work. Before we get into, our stuff, I just might add to that probably won't stop the bank. It will way later.
You're right.
Okay. I've been involved in well, I don't know if you know my past, but I was a real estate broker and or as a real estate agent and mortgage broker, and I at some point realized the fraud and stopped. You know, I sold my shares in my company that I had started back to my partners, and it was a large real estate company, 280 agents and the whole deal, right? And I got out, and the first thing I did was I counted up how many mortgages I had originated, and I decided I was going to help that many people who were in foreclosure get out of their foreclosure situation, or help as many as I could. It turned out to be about the same number as the number of mortgages that I originated in my real estate career, which is about 110. And so they weren't the same 110, but because the people that I put into mortgages were fairly affluent and not in trouble, and they weren't the same people. But I figured I'd put the universe straight where I was concerned and help as many people who'd been trapped by that system as I had put into it. So I have a little background in dealing with mortgages and foreclosure situations, and I might just add for your listeners, and Joe, for you, what after many years of dealing with that many mortgages and contracting privately with that many banks, what I found actually works. Our administrative justice course will be valuable for you for part of it, and that is setting the record straight in the private. Because if they do finally get you into court, you want to be able to submit sealed private evidence that there is actually no controversy, and the bank has already admitted that they're not either not a real party to the court proceeding, or that they have committed fraud, or that they were already paid, or some angle that establishes the facts, and you just go for summary judgment. Okay, it works best as a defendant. When brought into court, you just show you show the private record, they've already been paid, or they're not a real party in the action, and the case is in your favor for summary judgment. So what works, what doesn't necessarily work, is the money out of thin air theory, which is what I started with, which is if you understand modern money mechanics, and you know that you created the money into the system by the mortgage, by the promissory note, and that they never loaned you anything, that seldom works. I started using that theory. It is true. You created the money that bought your own house. The bank loaned you nothing. But when judges see that, they refer to some case law on that subject that's not necessarily relevant, but they don't read it carefully and they don't care. And they think you didn't pay them anything, so they find it in the bank's favor. What does work are the other two I mentioned. Fraud, which is very hard to prove, so I'd stay away from that one too, but can work. The best one I've found is if the bank can't prove their standing to be there. Okay, and this can be established by administrative procedure before they get you as a defendant. So now's the time to do it. In Joe's case, if they've given notice, and I'm not sure what state he's in or where he is in the process, but if there's no open court case to take the house, administrative procedure can work quite well to establish that they're not a real party to the action. And the key piece to doing that is a full audit, forensic audit of the account, the chain of title, and the securitization of the note. And so what you'll want to do is find a good forensic auditor, third party, who does this for a living, and will produce a report for the court that shows that there are so many flaws in the securitization, the chain of title, and the account itself that there's no telling whether this plaintiff bank actually has standing to bring the case. And almost every one of them, because of the securitization, almost every one of them will have trouble proving that they have standing. And so, when you paper the court case with this, and on top of that, you send them this audit in advance, and you do an administrative procedure based on the audit, giving them the opportunity to prove by affidavit and evidence that they have standing, and they don't, and they can't. Then the private administrative procedure goes in sealed to the court in camera, and then a motion to rule for summary judgment based on the sealed evidence is entered on the public side. Then you have then the court has no reason to proceed, and summary judgment is possible. That's the one that's working best out of all the possibilities of fighting these things.
Fantastic. Yeah. It's not talked about on Liberty Aid's website, but that's kind of, step 2 of 3. So, that's, we could talk about the extra wrinkles that I added to, you went in a different direction than one I'm going in right now to secure it in the private too. But I kind of added a few wrinkles that make it so they don't want to go in court with this system, because I know you know all this, Christian, but I use a trick, a small claims court, and so you go there for an FDCPA violation and a fine, right? And maybe they're guilty on that, maybe they're not, whatever. They just got to show up. That's not why you have them there. You have them there because in small claims for $0, as many times as you like, you can sue them for specific performance. Also, hey, Your Honor, since the debt is invalidated, please force them to write a satisfaction of lien and file it, please, because they don't have the note, they don't have standing, as you said, and so they got to whip it out. Like, either you do or you don't. Where's the paperwork right now? Like, now's the time. So it's kind of a trick like that, until you flush the pigeons with it. Then they do something wrong, then you flush them again, and you do it for free every time, and it's $5 or $10 up on them every time, and you just tell them to their face, well, I do this anyway, hey, see you next month, I'm going to file again, I'm just trying to make you spend money, and until you give up, and I know your paperwork's bad, so I'm just messing with you until you give me my paperwork. We can go as long as you want. It's free on my end. It's $10 a month to you. So that's kind of like the wrinkle I do, and I tell people, even just dismiss every time, make them come in 10 times. That's $100,000 to them. Eventually they'll settle. So, but I like your method too, because it's simpler and doesn't, take so much effort necessarily. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show tonight, because you all are really gifted at sidestepping a lot of conflict, that they initiate. So I really believe in what you just said, Christian. I know that works. So thank you for sharing that.
You bet. Yeah, I like that little court option. That's a good one. I mean, what we've been doing is basically saying, oh, well, great, nice to hear from you. Why don't you? This is after an administrative procedure, and they keep pressing, right? So why don't you just go ahead and set an appointment at any one of your branch offices near my house, and we'll sit down and examine the original note and deed of trust together. I'll bring my auditor, and we'll just have a look at it and make sure it's authentic. When would be best for you to make that appointment?
Yeah, exactly.
Basically what you're doing, and that's been working, but what you're doing is saying, let's make that appointment in small claims court. I like that.
Well, you schedule it for free, and, you send the summons to the CEO's office, so you make sure you get it via the clerk of court. So That's
great.
Yeah, and they don't like that so much. And it's free. They see that you I have people, you fill out the indigent form for filing for free or waiver of, fees or whatever. States have different names for it, right? And, of course, in my name, the man, as I sign in upper and lower case, I can have nothing in my name. So it's all zeros. No, I have no assets, nothing, 0. I'm indigent. There you go. And so, I file for free, and they get that paperwork that I'm filing for free every time. And then I file this whole package that has them, even with evidence of a felony, as I'm in my filing. So it's like, because if they're collecting and they don't have the note, of course, they're a debt collector, you have to be licensed, in states. And if you're not licensed, that's a felony. So, who's coming to court that we can charge with that crime? So, I like to have them break in the UCC, USC, a statute, specific performance, and put in evidence of felony into the initial filing. So that's the way I like to do it. And you're really just fleshing them. And you're playing their game on them. All these things, you make them dance, and you really have them there for another reason altogether, the specific performance. So, anyway, that's great. So I'm kind of turning that into an administrative process. So that's what I'm hoping to glean from you all is like I already have it, but I'd like to have it sort of like maybe just from the get-go instead of this whole thing, but it's working too. So, but please go on. That's so great to hear about what you're doing, man. I did not know that about your background. I love how you're doing that. So I'm doing the same thing. It's my spiritual work too. So please tell us more, man.
Sure. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work for everyone. And the ones that the people that I've helped, I'd say, I don't know, maybe honestly, a third of them have managed to keep their houses, and maybe it's half, but it's not more than half for sure. And the ones that failed, almost without exception, are the homeowners who didn't learn it themselves. So that they're getting help from me and others or whatever, but if you're in that position, you really need to learn where the problems the bank has are, and learn to stand on them and don't be called off your mark. And so some of the people that I tried to help just thought I was going to do it all for them, and they didn't. And I could tell when I talked to them, or whatever, they weren't doing their own homework, and they weren't learning it enough themselves. And when the bank smells an opportunity to go up against someone who doesn't know anything, they're going to take it. They're going to rush it as fast as possible to eviction and court. And if you're not ready to stand there in your truth, you don't stand a chance. So the one thing I would say is, if you're listening into this and working with Jack, make sure you're learning what works, because you can't just depend on Jack. That's the big deal.
Thank you. That's the hardest part of our work, and I tell people just from the get-go, I ain't fishing for you. I will show you how to fish, but you will be doing all the fishing yourself. There's no way around that. I developed the simplest 3-step system I could, but in our work, for me, that's the hardest point, what you just brought up, because you see them, and they're in the spot, and the information you have can really help them out of that spot, but you can't perform for them. So, that's really important to hear what Christian just said right there, people, please.
Yeah, and the other side of that coin is that, there's a spiritual practice that you get to learn one way or the other if you're in foreclosure, and all of us need to learn it. And so I think that's part of, on a spiritual level, that's part of why all these foreclosures and economic mess are occurring, and that is detachment. If you are so emotionally attached to your home, dependent and in fear and, victim mentality and all of those things, then you can't think straight. So the practice that you get to learn whether you lose your house or not is that a detachment to a specific outcome is healthy. And once you manage to make yourself detached, then you can approach it from a logical and business perspective, a law perspective, and not a fear and victim mentality, and not a stress or emotion level. And that detachment is, if you learn it now and save your house, great. If you don't learn it now and lose your house, you get to learn it when you lose your house. Because eventually you're going to realize, you know what, I was just wrongfully attached to that anyway. So the lesson gets learned in foreclosure, and it's an important spiritual advancement to learn a healthy detachment. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have goals, doesn't mean you shouldn't have things you want to achieve in life, things you want to fight for or whatever. It just means that, the universe is going to deliver to you whatever you need. And if you can do that earlier, you can learn the lesson of detachment and operate from that perspective and know that you're going to get what comes. And that may be for the best some way. Even if you lose your house, that may be for the best. It may be what you needed. Then, if you can learn that detachment early, you might save your house.
I just want to say, I want to jump in there, Christian. Having lost my house in 2008, as a real estate developer, licensed general contractor, having to come up with $25,000 a week for, employees and subs, I lost my, when I was flipping, but it was like 6-bedroom, 4-bath on the golf course, giant thing, and so it was great to lose all of that attachment. And I became detached and really saw through it after, and I had an MBA. I have a master's in accounting then, I still didn't see it, people. So, don't think ill of yourself. What he just said, you will learn. And I did learn. And, sometimes, it's the only way we can learn a lesson permanently is this way. And I totally accepted, it. Like, that's what became my spiritual path, acceptance. I accept what happened. I accept all this information. I accept their paperwork's no good. I accept this whole file. I accept it, okay? Fine. Now, what am I going to do about it? Like, what then, that's the spot in the path where all the crossroads, go. So then, at that moment, like, what are you going to do? And that's where that shift that Christian was just talking about happens, or it happened for me anyway. So I agree with you, man.
So on the subject of foreclosure, before we move on, I'll just say, if anyone wants to know, sometimes finding a good forensic auditor is a difficult thing, and it costs anywhere from $700 maybe to $1,500 to get a forensic audit done. If anyone needs a good forensic auditor, I've got one that's trusted and proven, and will, sign an affidavit to go with the report, and will appear in court as a witness if needed, which is a requirement for any affidavit submitted in court. They have to agree to appear for questioning if the other side calls for it. So I have one. I don't know her personally, but I have now a couple of people that I've worked with that have used her. She's in San Diego, but she can do different states as well. You can send an email to us at trustees@gten.org, GTEN.org. That's trustees, plural, at gten.org. I'd be happy to share that information with anyone who needs it. It has stopped several court cases already.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that.
You bet.
Now, a thought has come to mind since we've been talking, and that is, I run into kind of different camps, shall we say, on some of this. And it's like, how to say this, bringing an administrative remedy, like a private remedy, this is, what a detractor I've heard generally says. So, and I'm sure you've heard this. So that's what I want to set this up this way so you can answer this. And that is, you make this agreement, in the private, but they don't necessarily, send you anything or anything like that in an administrative process. So people are like, well, that's just some, internet stuff. Like I heard that one recently. Anyway, that's some internet stuff you're doing. Like that, that paperwork's, not, valid or what have you. Like, it's just kind of a general thing that I hear from people. Not everyone. I'm just saying, like, that's just this thing I hear. How do you, and you're such a great educator, so because this comes up not just for you and I as educators, but for people out there trying to overcome this, because you got to win the battle in your mind first, So how do you deal with that type of a question, maybe, Christian?
Sure. If you do an administrative process improperly, it is invalid. That's the first thing to know, is that you can invalidate it yourself sometimes by how you do it. If you know how to do it properly, then it all comes down to acceptance, and that's Uniform Commercial Code. Okay, it's codified. So what does acceptance mean in the Uniform Commercial Code, in the business world, and in commerce? And so if you know what you're doing and do it right, it's legit. Now, lawyers will always say this is meaningless paperwork. That'll be the response you get from Bank of America. This is meaningless, and we're not going to respond to this sort of correspondence again. Okay, great. You're not going to respond, which means I'm going to get an administrative judgment against you on paper. And that's going to be the private record establishing the facts. Because of the affidavits contained in the administrative procedure or affidavit that was unresponded to by affidavit, the facts are now established in the private. Okay? So I know what I have, and they know they're putting up scarecrows saying I don't have anything, go fly away. And when it comes down to submitting that in a public place such as court, you need to know how to submit it privately as sealed evidence. And there are local rules and federal rules on how to do that properly. And if you do it properly and then publicly point to it on the public side of the court case with a motion for summary judgment for the judge to review the private evidence, the private record, and then rule on it, then it has to be considered. So, people can say, well, I think what usually happens with administrative procedure is that people do it. They get the response from the bank or whatever that says this is mumbo jumbo. They don't know how to do anything else with it, and so they let it go. And some of that has to do with the fact that they never learned why it's valid or how it's valid. One of the things we do with GTEN and anything that we teach is we take it right down to the source material to show you, why is this valid? In our Living Free the System course, for example, which shows you how to pay no personal income tax ever again if you so choose, legally, we show all of it through Supreme Court cases, through the congressional records, through the statutes at large, through the Federal Reserve website, through the Treasury website, through the IRS website. Through the organic laws. I left that out. So if I can show you where we're getting all our information and this is why it's true and why it works, and show you something that's worked, show you correspondence from the IRS that zeroes accounts, then you have the confidence to move forward with it. And when I learned administrative procedure, I thought, oh, this is great. And I started doing it and using it. And no one had ever told me, though, in the gurus that I learned from, or the seminars, or the whatever, there's stuff on the websites and all the sources I use to pull it together. I never knew why exactly it was supposed to work. So there was always this question in my mind of whether it was real. And every time anyone ever responded to it, usually a bank or the government or whoever I was doing administrative procedure with, the letters I got back would be, this is nonsense and we're not going to respond to it anymore. And you start to think, well, geez, I wonder if it is nonsense. But I can tell you that I use it, have used it for years, and I'm very happy with the results. So I think it's a matter of understanding. There is no magic paperwork. Now, on administrative procedure, there's definitely good paperwork and bad paperwork, okay? But even if you have the best paperwork, if you don't understand why it works, why it's real, and have the deep understanding to have the confidence in it, then it's not going to work. And I think most people get cold feet somewhere in the process. They start to believe the responses they're getting. Other people tell them, yeah, I tried that, it didn't work. Whatever it is, they just kind of give up on it. So I think the understanding, the depth of understanding and looking at the source material, it's why it's legitimate, why it works, is the key.
Definitely. Yeah, that's such a great way to put it. And so saying the issue about saying this works great as a defendant, I understand that because there's an action in court already, so there's already a methodology to enforce your privately secured settling of this conflict, which is going through the administrative process, perfecting that claim, getting a judgment if need be. If they initiate an action in your direction, thereby being the defendant, it works as a shield and it blocks their actions. My methodology is that we were talking about earlier. Ads. You could use it as a spear too. Go to small claims court and use it as a spear if you'd like. Because enforcement is the issue. It just so it doesn't sit there and lay there because it doesn't do anything there, as you said, and especially if it's not even any good. If it was void ab initio, if it was, if the paperwork wasn't right in the beginning, but then come, there's the blocking of it. Definitely, I could see that being extremely effective if it's the right paperwork. The issue about kind of like removing conflict, that's another issue. Like, can you speak to how, the methodology using it in that regard?
Sure. The best way to resolve something, in my opinion, is always privately. Okay, and court is a last resort, and the Bible tells you that. Whether you're Christian or not, you have to understand the Bible is responsible for most of the laws that we that we have now, at least in the Western world. There's an obligation to try to resolve things privately, right? And instead of running to the magistrate with every little issue. So if you are able to resolve things in private, great. If you're not able to resolve things in the private to your satisfaction, I tend to not go in as a plaintiff on very many things. I'll find another way to handle things privately. But if that issue then turns into a court case where you're the defendant, you already have the private record. That make sense?
Yes, totally. That's using it as a shield. Like, if an action comes at you and you're the defendant, it makes an impenetrable shield. If you know why it is an impenetrable shield, your will, not just the paperwork itself, but your will behind the paperwork, and you're willing to stand in the truth of that paperwork and know it, is how it is used as the perfect shield. Yes, definitely. But let's say, like, an example. I'm sure you could have a million examples, but let's say an example. Like, for me, it was like, oh man, I want to go, get some credit, and I had all these derogatory accounts on my credit, so like I had to come at them, So I had to figure out a way to initiate, or maybe what I'm not hearing you properly on is you have methodology to resolve this in the private that get a lot of traction, which would love to hear about. So it's just like how not that it's coming at you so much, but it's a conflict that's still like it's not court action, but derogatory mark on your credit report. It's still weighing you down. It's still an anchor you'd love to cut the chain on somehow. So you got to initiate something. But I'm sure you have other things that would come up about like that too. So something like mortgage down on the deed that you don't want to have it there, and they haven't come after you yet. Something like that. That I'm more thinking my whatever. Maybe it's a terrible analogy, but I was thinking if they're coming at you as a defendant, using it as a shield, and if you're trying to do something like I just described, that's more of the spirit thing, like you're trying to end the conflict. But I guess I could use more peaceful terminology. It's not coming to me, I guess, from years of not thinking that way. But maybe you have some, light on that you could shed in that regard, Christian.
Well, as far as I can tell, you're the man when it comes to credit debt issues. When we started GTEN, we kind of made a pact that we were not any longer going to dwell in the domain of our historical problems. And I would call credit blemishes a historical problem. You got in trouble. They noted it on your credit report, right? So it's a historical issue. While our administrative justice course may shed some light on how to handle some of those things, it's not our intention to get into debt issues. What I would say to that, I mean, the way I've handled credit report is I just let it go. I don't use my all caps name person, the juristic person that is associated with my birth certificate and the Social Security number, and I don't even consider them mine anymore. In fact, I refuse to any longer, be in charge of that. So I just kind of gave those back. Instead, what we focus on at GTEN is how to live outside of that system, how to develop a web of private trusts, and if you want to have a public entity out there, with credit, you develop corporate credit on a business rather than personal credit on a Social Security number based account. So my solution was actually quite simple to the credit report issue, because there was a point in my life where I went from perfect 850 credit with about $1 million of debt to I just put all of those accounts on a hayride to hell and slapped the horse on the butt, and that hayride went off, dragging my credit report with it, and now that juristic person, the all caps name, sort of misversion of me, it's totally judgment proof, and I don't use it anymore. Anyone looks to collect anything from that person, good luck. All they see on the credit report is that person's completely insolvent. Right? So instead, develop a private trust that contractually controls a corporation, a C corp or an LLC or something of that sort, and develop corporate credit. And actually, one of our contemplated upcoming courses at GTEN is how to develop corporate credit better than the credit you ever had on your person in about 120 days. So I've studied that deeply. I've done it with corporations, and corporate credit is so far superior to personal credit because personal credit has a ceiling. Even if you're making $500,000 a year, you're never going to get more than maybe $400,000 in unsecured credit. Typically it's going to be more like $150,000, and it's going to cap. The more personal credit you get, for a while it'll get more and more personal credit will get extended to you. But you reach a point, no matter how much you make, on how much unsecured personal credit you're given. Whereas corporate credit, the more credit you're given, the more lines of credit, the more unsecured credit that Dun & Bradstreet account shows, the more banks are inclined to want to offer you loans. So it's a continual, unending growth of borrowing potential in corporate credit, whereas personal credit always caps out. So, the right way, in my opinion, to be operating out in the public is using a U.S. franchise corporation or LLC. I prefer C corps for a number of reasons over LLCs. But you're choosing that way to operate through a specific entity that is not the juristic person based on the birth certificate and the Social Security number.
I mean, sometimes when I get to do this Evolve Quest show, I get to hear an answer to the question that, is just so great. I just want to hear it again. That was one of those. I mean, I think you really got to so much of the meat of what you and PJ do and GTEN does for people. And I really think, people, if you listen to what Christian and PJ are doing there, they're doing just the absolute, some of the most gifted work that exists out there. And until you understand what he just said and can do what Christian just said, you're not really in a completely safe position out there in a way to settle conflicts peacefully, with a minimum of effort, and still, getting back all, getting credit out there in the market, protected credit. You're protected as an individual, but you can still perform out there in commerce and business in the financial world, at the stores, there's really, it's more changing a few things rather than changing everything in your life and how you live your life. It's not about that. In a way, it does get a lot easier, definitely. But I really can't say enough how much I respect their work and their ability to do the work that Christian just described. It's so beautiful to hear that.
Thanks. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with thinking, let me put it this way. We all grow up in a box. When you're born, you're so in tune with truth and abundance, and you're born on this massive rush of DMT where you're shown that it's all love and primordial energy, and the world is what you make of it, and that's why babies come out crying, not because they're upset, but because they've just seen how wonderful everything is. And then you spend your formative years in a box. Okay, we've created this sort of society, this 3D realm. It has boxes, and we live sort of in a box. And a lot of people thought 2012 was a dud because maybe it was going to change everything, and there's all these predictions of what might happen on December 21st, 2012. I think what happened was the lid came off the box. And so we still got walls around us that prevent us from seeing everything. But, we can see some daylight, and we can see that maybe there's some ways of changing things. And we can advance humanity in a way now that's thinking outside the box, literally. And some of these things, like the answer to your question, which probably wasn't what you were expecting, is one of those things. It's maybe the best answer isn't the one you think it is. Maybe the best answer isn't fixing your credit. Maybe it is. Everyone's different. But for me, it wasn't. It definitely wasn't. I'm never going to use personal credit again. People have offered, because of what we do and whatever, people have offered to fix my personal credit for free, just to show me what they can do. If I fix your personal credit, will you help me do this or whatever? And I'm like, you know what? I like my personal credit to read like a junk bond. I like having my person judgment proof, because who can come after me when there's nothing there?
So true. I mean, it's really such a great thought. It really is. I more act out on that area just because people maybe kind of got to start somewhere where they know, and then that is a good place for unveiling. And once, they have that aha moment when they can sort of unveil, oh my God, I don't actually owe this money, then that kind of brings them to all these other realms, and I hope people, that are listening to me, my goal is really, that people get educated and can, do this work themselves. And Christian and PJ, of the people that I've interacted with, including myself, definitely, they have the most clear and useful and helpful information that I've run across, presented in a way, it's set up for education to share that information with others. It's set up that way in a really great way in their seminars and so on. So, people, I know I have people that listen, yes, I beat the banks and so on, but, I do my work, I do my research, I'm ready when I go, and I recommend, their body of work and their ability to impart knowledge. They're gifted in that way. And I'm not just saying it, like, we have no connection other than, I want people to, win. That's what I care about. That's all I care about. Like, whatever resolves your conflict in your favor, there are different methods, and these guys really know a lot about what they're doing, and it really works well. So please continue to share how you do those amazing things, Christian, because I think some people don't even know exactly what you're talking about. It's like a foreign language, what you just said.
That may be. I apologize if it is a foreign language. If anyone has questions, do you have a way to take questions on the show? Can people raise their hand?
Yeah, we do. We do, and we have a call-in number, and it's 619-924-0692. But you see it, people usually hit the link and find us. I do have a number here, and I'm wondering if it's our extra host. We haven't heard from anyone else. Let me see. Caller on 601-334. Who is this? Is this
hey, how are you guys? Hello, can you hear me?
Is this Lucas?
This is Derek White. How y'all doing?
Oh, Derek, good. We do have a listener. Okay, great. Do you have a question for Christian or PJ?
I'm more so going through, I was stopped Sunday for, it's a long story. I was stopped for a marijuana case, and I'm kind of looking for some information on that. I'm not too much into, I don't have a house, I don't have a mortgage. I'm kind of interested in this stuff like the treasury direct accounts and stuff like that, because this is all sort of related and tied in with the treasury estates and the trusts and all that type stuff. I'm just wondering what kind of input you guys have on that side of the paradigm.
On the marijuana case or on Treasury Direct?
Either or, because I have court tomorrow. It really helped me out, and I'm just in a pickle. But I'm just trying to fit into the theme of the show more so than anything else.
Okay, well, regarding your case, we're not lawyers. We don't give legal advice, and I don't know your situation enough to say anything useful in any case. Good luck.
Right.
do your homework.
Yeah.
Treasury Direct. I assume you're talking about the sort of golden goose of the sovereign,
right, the philosopher's stone of the Federal Reserve black card, right?
So we have, I've known many people, and we have a number of members of GTEN.org that are, interested as well. But I've known many people going after that, and I have close contact with a number of people that are looking into how to sort of capture the straw man, so to speak. I could tell you that the problem to overcome with it is that it's a split title. If you go into it assuming that it's your account, you're mistaken. Just like a house or a car, anything that's registered with the government, anything that's registered title.
The state owns it.
You just have the use of it. So, your car, if it's registered, or your house, if it's on the tax rolls, The true title is owned by the state. And
well, your name itself is an agency of the United States, is it not?
That's right. You have usufruct of it as that U.S. franchise agent. Okay. So that split title is a fatal flaw in what many people believe that's your account. Okay. Now I'm not saying there's no way around that. I'm just saying that's the crux of the problem that needs to be understood and overcome if there's any reality to capturing that account. Right. Or gaining further access to that account. So I don't think you can fully capture it. You may be able to get higher access to it than you've been using all your life, but you can't assume that you can ever capture it completely. It's not yours, or it's not yours entirely. It's split title. Okay, so if that helps you in your quest, I hope it does. We don't teach that, and we haven't done it ourselves. But I do know a lot of people who are going after that, and we keep tabs on their progress. Let's just say, and we help them out with.
I'm friends with Mr. Bryson, and I'd love to get in contact with whoever you can put me in contact with. And I'm also curious about the UCC. If I could ask a question about that.
Sure.
I've seen two ways of doing the UCC, as far as I understand. It's where you assign reversionary interest over the United States, where you say the United States is a secure party creditor. And I've seen another way where people go in and say, okay, this is Derek Edward of White, and I'm going in and claiming all capital Derek Edward White. Have you ever encountered that, or?
Okay. So first, when you say the UCC, what the UCC is a large volume of law called the Uniform Commercial Code. Okay.
I was referring to UCC 1.
You're talking about UCC 1 filing. Right. When you file a UCC 1 filing, my advice would be, if you're going to do it, know exactly why you're doing it and have a security agreement of some sort to back it up. Because the UCC 1 filing is nothing but notice of a commercial lien.
Right. Is it kind of like a redundant process for having on paper to just submit into a case or some such or the other, or a state of affairs that already exists, where your name is already an agency of the United States? I just want to have it on paper to submit it in the case, so you have it as soon as I walk into court and it's filed into the court as evidence, right?
I don't know if it's going to do you any good.
I hear that.
Just to be honest with you. PJ, you have anything to say about a UCC 1 filing? You still there?
I'd say that, this brings up an interesting topic in regards to, what we do and trust, because it's really going to be determined by what type of security agreement that you have. It's exactly what Christian said. We're going to fall right back to security agreements. Security agreements are created, and UCC 1 financing statements reflect an interest that is existing from that security agreement being made. Now, if you're creating a security agreement with quote-unquote living person or the living man versus the person, the tax identifier or whatnot, then you're putting yourself in an odd position, because you're claiming that something that is not commercial has a security interest over something that is. And the living man, quote unquote, can't really exist in commerce. What you're creating is a constructive trust with no elements of how the trust is going to be managed. And it you look dual-minded at that point and not necessarily fit for court.
That makes sense. So that's why
that's why, oftentimes what happens is a private express trust would step up with a priority security interest and would then manage what's taking place in court. Now, what I'm talking about, the majority of would happen to be civil. In terms of criminal actions, I'm not sure. I couldn't tell you how that would transfer over. It really depends on what type of status you're claiming at that point, or of course, then we'd have to get into the interaction. And like Christian said, fortunately, we can't give any legal advice. So
there's a YouTube video that you may want to check out. It's called Secured Party Creditor Concepts, and it's a short clip that came from one of our webinar sessions, I believe, or maybe it was a radio show. I can't remember. But it's on our YouTube channel, which is GTEN Trustees. There's a whole bunch of stuff on our YouTube channel, by the way. You may want to play on that for a bit, but you might want to listen to that, because you kind of go in to a fuller, more complete discussion of that issue than I think we should do today.
Yep.
So check that out. I don't know that it's going to give you any answers for tomorrow. It probably won't, but it might, it might, I don't know, push you off of something you're considering that you've heard doing somewhere that may or may not really work for you. The truth is that a UCC1 can be a powerful tool, but it is just notice of a commercial lien. It's notice of a security agreement that creates a commercial lien, and misused. Personally, I think it creates a nice little list for the NSA or whoever else
exactly.
of people to keep an eye on. I don't think it does much else unless you really do it right in conjunction with a well thought out procedure. So my view on it is it's not necessarily wrong, and you may know enough about it, I don't know, to do something that's worthwhile. It sounds like maybe you don't yet, and I can tell you with all the studying and teaching I've done of this stuff for the past, I don't know, almost a decade, I've never filed a UCC1 security agreement on the person. Doesn't say I never will, but I haven't found any source or combination of sources that make any sense yet to show me why.
And they're contradictory, the information that's out there. I agree.
That's right. And my practice, our practice, PJ and I, is that if we can't find the authoritative source material, if we can't find it in the law of why this works or how it works, then it's just someone's opinion. And I'm not going to do anything based on someone else's opinion.
Yep.
Yeah. I can tell you that, you do have the ability to transfer assets to a private trust that can maintain a priority security interest, and that security agreement that's created, that trust, if needed to, which is it's not necessary, but if for some reason it was necessary, if there was a challenge of the interest that the trust held, the trust could file a UCC financing statement noticing public that there's a priority security interest in whatever asset is being challenged at the time. But what we're talking about here is individual assets. There's several different ways that an individual or a person, quote unquote, can transfer assets into trust. And, once we understand that we can derive these trusts from our own divine right, and we control the jurisdiction when we are the grantors, or we are given the ability to operate in a certain jurisdiction as trustees, then we have the ability to circumvent these issues and not concern ourselves so much. The security agreement is a specific thing. The financing statement is a specific thing that's used to represent, like Christian said, a commercial lien of some kind or an interest of some kind in an asset or property that's being transferred for the purpose of security for either some sort of transaction that's taking place, a loan, it's being used as collateral, something of that nature. And we all understand the basics. So we're all here in the same group, it seems like. We understand the ideal of capturing the straw man. That's not the way to do it. It's dual-minded, and it puts the living man, in, like I said, into a commercial atmosphere that it can't exist in. We're talking about fake things here. We're talking about fiat. We're talking about commerce. We're talking about creating and operating within personas, persons, masks, the theater. We're here projecting our voices, our will, through certain entities for certain specific purposes. And to try and capture one that was given to you by application of your family or your parents and by consent of your use of it, right? Because your use of it, your application of benefits from it, indicates the fact that you have certain rights that you've consented to giving up in exchange for benefits and privileges. So it's just not necessary. You can step away from that theater. You can step away from that mask and say, I'm not going to play that role for a minute. I'm going to create my own play, create my own role, step into my own mask, my own persona, and operate my own will, my own divine right will. So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I don't know if I've gone off the subject here.
Well, no, that's the whole idea. Well, they have this idea that legal entity can be used to control the living man, and that's the whole idea that how do we come to a point where we have absolute title as far as possible, even though it's not entirely possible to have absolute title over, to have the controlling interest of your own being, your own person, your own body, the land
the
of your
living man
soul.
has. I'm sorry to interrupt you. The living man has the ability to express his will and declare what he wishes to be done, and he can then assign an individual to carry out that will. And that will is as valuable or as noticeable or as executable as the living man himself or as a natural person. It actually becomes a natural person. And it fits all the roles of a natural person. And by divine right, we have created our own control of whatever property it is that we're going to be placing in the trust at the time. So it's about creating the private express trust. It's about creating it by divine right. We don't have to apply for any of that. We can create that out of thin air. Just like we've hypothecated our own values.
The specific answer to your question, when and how did that happen, is the Constitution set the stage. The Constitution was a very dual-minded, open document that set the stage for the 14th Amendment, which set the stage for Lincoln's Order 100, also known as the Lieber Code, which is now, if you consent, and most people do by default, then
by accepting and claiming the name,
that you're ruled through the person, and you've accepted to be ruled through the person as a subject under martial law. Okay, and that's how it came about. In answer to your question, it doesn't mean that you can't learn how to remove consent, stop giving consent, and live as a living man, as a people, as opposed to a person. The person does not control the people unless you acquiesce to that subject control. Okay, so there's a lot of unlearning to do and there's a lot of learning to do, but it is possible to sever those two and not be controlled through the person. And that's
can you do that and still hold a job or have a bank account, or it's like either or? You either drop out or you play by the rules, I guess.
Yes, I don't use the juristic person for anything, and I have a great life.
Do you have a trust or LLC that is your all caps name or some such or the other? How do you go about that?
No, I don't use the all caps name for anything. In fact, anything that comes in the all caps name to my mailbox, I return to sender. I don't accept any contracting with anyone, even if it's just a credit card offer. Return to sender. That person doesn't live here.
Are you a business owner, or what name comes on your check?
So that if you're are you a W-2 employee?
Yeah.
Okay. So that technology is all in Living Free the System, the last course we taught, and that is available for streaming videos on our website. Living Free the System will show you everything you need to know under the law as to how to properly contract for a job with the employer and the IRS, and properly contract with the bank so that you are not triggering any taxable events and there is no tax due. So then you collect a full check, and there's no tax due. And if the IRS questions it, you send them a letter, and they zero the account. So yes, it's possible and preferable if you don't want to fund the war machine anymore. Now, I don't choose to fund what's currently going on, especially since actually $0 of personal income tax goes to any of the infrastructure that people believe it funds. It all just goes as a straight skim to the Federal Reserve Bank, because the Treasury is the collector, the IRS is their collection arm, and we're a bankrupt country giving that skim of interest to the Federal Reserve and the IMF and the World Bank, and that I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to be a part of that. So we dug into the law and found out what the law really says, according to the Supreme Court, according to the congressional records, according to statutes at large, according to the organic laws, and we show exactly how you can stand in the truth on that and not trigger a personal income tax. A lot of people think personal income tax is some sort of fraud on the people or an unconstitutional procedure. I don't believe that's true. I believe the IRS has the right. The government has the right to collect. The IRS has the right to collect. That doesn't mean that they're collecting the way you think they are. That doesn't mean that you have an obligation to pay. You may have a past obligation to pay. You probably do, because you've probably triggered all of the taxable events through your life, and you probably do owe the IRS. But if you set yourself up right for the future, there's no reason to pay personal income tax again if you don't want to. And yes, you can still work and earn a living. That's your constitutional right. And by constitutional right, I don't mean the Constitution gives you that right. When I say constitutional right, it's important to understand that right is yours, regardless of the law.
God-given.
It's a human right. That's a right to the people. And the Constitution upholds that right, and so does the Supreme Court. Taxation, the most essential basic property right, according to the Supreme Court ruling on the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, says that the fundamental property right is the right to work and earn a living. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because no other property is arrived at by any other means, right? Somebody worked and earned it, right? Unless you stole it, which is not a right. But if you work and earn money, that's not a taxable event. Taxable events come in other ways that are more hidden and are legal, as far as I can tell. They're constitutional, as far as I can tell, as far as my research has shown. But it doesn't mean that you have to play the game the way it's, kind of colorably established.
Right. After House Joint Resolution 192, there shouldn't be a taxable event unless you were paid in dollars or gold or silver backed by dollars or some such or the other, correct? Not exactly.
Okay. The IRS works on very deceptive means, okay, but they're not fraudulent or unconstitutional means. The income tax is an excise tax. It's not a direct tax. It is called for and allowable in the Constitution for excise taxes to be administered, okay, and collected. But if you understand what an excise tax is, it's not a tax on property. It's not a direct tax. It's a tax on an event. And there are certain triggers that are the taxable events that cause you to owe the income tax. Okay, it is not a tax on income. It's called the income tax, but it is not a tax on income. It is a tax on certain events, certain things that you do. Okay, and that includes the way you handle Federal Reserve notes. It includes the way you apply for a job. It includes the way you bank. It includes a number of things. Okay, if you trigger the quote-unquote income tax, it's not a tax on income. It's a tax on these events. It's an excise tax on these events, and then it's calculated based on income. So it's not actually an income tax, and the Supreme Court will tell you that there is no tax on income.
Would it be fair to say that it's a fee for improperly handling or improperly acting in commerce?
It's a tax on the unwitting. Yes,
I hear that.
It's a fee charged to those who choose by not knowing better to trigger the tax. And if you know if you know how to avoid it, you don't have to pay it. Plain as day.
I thank y'all so much for humoring me. I know I was off topic or something, but I think there certainly is a parallel in between the land of your soul, having a controlling interest in the land of your soul, and having a controlling interest in your domicile, which isn't supposed to be a domicile or your house. So I hope it helped someone other than me.
Hey, brother. Hey, just hold on just 1 second, okay? Your questions were great, by the way. Thank you so much for being here. But I don't want you to go away. Because their information is great, and with proper planning, you could resolve the issue tomorrow had you planned properly, I think is the message that Christian and PJ are not directly saying. But I would, before you get off, can we go back to your marijuana charges for a minute? Because that's tomorrow, right?
Sure. I just didn't know how much time I had, so I was trying to be concise.
Oh, we are here for our listeners, and we appreciate you taking the time to call in and ask questions. They're really relevant to day-to-day life. And I know on the face of it, for a minute, as you're trying to process what Christian and PJ are saying, on the face of it, for a minute, it seems like, how does this, deal with what I'm having a conflict with? Let me just tell you, it does, and you need to do your homework with that. But I'm going to set that aside for just a minute, okay? And I don't give legal advice either. I'm just an accountant. I give the accounting information, just help people with their bookkeeping. That's all I do. But I can speak about something I did, that I myself did, and it relates to your situation tomorrow. If you want to hear a short story, that's something I did.
Please.
Okay. Well, I read something. I read this account, and then it made me formulate a plan, which I enacted myself. And I only impart information that I do myself first. So it's not like legal information; it's historical information. So I read this story, and one of our guests actually said it the other night, and I didn't interrupt. I listened to the whole story. It was so beautiful to hear someone else tell it. And it was an explanation of a legal term called an allocution, and it's has a historical event with it that really I read, and it came to me that this is the method that I was going to use and did use successfully in court. And it was a story about Custer, when he was, General Custer, Little Bighorn, that one, right? Okay. He was at West Point being educated, and I believe that he was in his first year as a cadet. He broke the rules at West Point, and he got in a duel with someone and killed the opposing party. And because he did that in West Point rules, it was death by hanging if they had found him guilty, okay? So they go through the court-martial. This is what I read, okay? And at the end, they find him guilty. And, but before they sentence him, because they slam that gavel down and there's a space of time, and they say, or they should say, sometimes they don't say it, so they usually say, do you have anything to say, before we pronounce sentencing? And this is the area, the space and time for an allocution to come up. And this is what Custer did. He said, hey, yes, I'm a cadet at West Point, but I did not sign the code when I came in. I didn't sign the agreement that I would follow the code. He didn't sign. There's, you have to go in and sign the contract, and they went and looked for the piece of paper, and that piece of paper wasn't there. And so, yes, they found him guilty, but they were not able to have a sentencing that would affect him because he wasn't in contract with them. And that story, held great significance for me. When I read it, I was like, oh my God, this guy might actually do something good in American history. That would be a switch. And so what I did was I had a, marijuana paraphernalia case in Raleigh, North Carolina, this giant friggin' skyscraper of a building. This was during Occupy, and I would go in my VW pop top when I was looking at that, and I'd go up there and I'd live at Occupy, so they didn't like me very much. I wasn't with Occupy. They would just have me, you know, and I could walk to the courthouse from downtown Raleigh there, and they kept pushing my court as I'd give them paperwork. But one day I had to go, and, you know, they didn't like my paperwork. They wouldn't accept anything. The court case, you know, I'm standing there, you know, I had submitted my paperwork properly, but since they wouldn't take it on the court record and see it, it wasn't doing me any good. So I had to go through this thing, and so I used my voice as I'm, you know, responding to the judge's questions. You know, you're guilty. Sure, I'm here in the guild. I'm here to settle this matter. So we went back and forth to the point where she is screaming at me, literally screaming in front of 50, you know, armed police and 50, squires and probably 300 or 400 people in the courtroom. It was a giant building. So it is, I guess. That she's going to put me in jail for 120 days. She's screaming that to me. Do you have anything to say? Because I'm going to find you guilty and give you 120 days, right? That's what she's literally red-faced, screaming her head off at me, okay? Hits the gavel. Guilty. I looked down at my piece of paper that I had written this note on and read it to her, as now the bailiff is touching my left arm with his hand on his gun, eyeing the judge, you know, with the look of, is it okay? Can I shoot and kill this motherfucker right now? Look on his face. Not. This is my, you know, personal experience, so I'm just sharing it with you. And so I read that piece of paper which said, I came in honor, settle any bonded claims. None were presented. Therefore, I dismissed this case. And at which point I turned and it said, excuse me, to the bailiff, and walked out of the room and down the stairs and out on the street of Raleigh. And I'm still here. So I just wanted to share my personal experience with you, and not able to give legal advice, but I am able to account some information from my personal experience with you. So I wanted to share that. And I'm sorry, you know, for to get sidetracked off of our trust in the state thing, but I just don't like my people to be out there undefended. So I hope that assists you.
Did they not put a warrant out for you after that?
Of course, I dismissed the case.
Awesome.
Now, I dismissed the case. What happens is the paperwork that they did on me was, you know, they had me, they knew it was Occupy. How this thing came about was I was standing at a bus stop and the cop came and just yanked me and put me in the car, and they had a little bit of weed and a pipe. I got a dugout in my bag, you know, and so they were just looking to snatch me so they'd get me and, like, do me, you know, legal harm because I was hanging with those people. But really, you know, anyway. So that's how they got me started on it. So if they could have got me, they wanted to get me, okay? It's not, that was pretty obvious, so, you know, from their actions. No, they gave me, you know, they put me in a jail and they gave me a $500 bond, which is like a pain in the ass bond. You got to spend like more than that to get a bondsman to come down and do your bond. You have to spend more than $500 to get them down there to get you out. So they just were fucking with me. And so I had to spend the night in jail until I could get to the ATM and give them their $500, right? And so when I look back at my record for that event, my legal record for that, you know, I had time served of 1 day from being in while I was under bond. And that is the full paperwork outcome from the story I just told you. No warrant. Because I've been back chained, and they didn't have a warrant for me on another thing that they came hunting on me, okay? And it wasn't there. So, you know, and I'm free now talking to you on the radio thing. So I hope, you know, because here's the question you have to ask yourself. Are you this entity that you're in the courtroom for? Are you that entity? Or are you a man? And can you speak words out of your... Okay, so can you speak the words at the proper moment that allow you to walk out of the room? That's up to you. Where is your belief system? Where is your knowledge system? Where is your heart? How spiritually enlightened to yourself are you? Can you do what I just said? Can you hear what I just said? because I became invisible in that room and walked out of the room, and nobody saw me do what I just did, even though I did it in front of hundreds of people. Just saying, like, this is information I share with you, but, you know, that's all I'm doing is sharing it with you. So I wish you success, and I really appreciate your questions tonight. I really do. Thank you for taking the time to do that with us.
May I ask who that was? Who was speaking? Was that Mr. McCaig or?
Yes, it was. Yes.
All right, awesome. Thank you. I think you just added me on Facebook, so sweet. Thank you so much for humoring me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, if that brought up anything, hit me up, dude. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on tonight.
Thank y'all for having me.
Okay, man. Okay, Christian, DJ, it's so great when we have, one of our listeners have all those great series of questions. But we know we want to address that, we have someone there that really wants the knowledge.
I think that was great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that. Yeah, that was fantastic.
So let's say, what kind of thing comes up for you to kind of like wrap up that really long kind of interaction for people? Because, I could see, the same thing happened to me that happened with our listener. The first time I got to really interact with you and looked at your work, I was just kind of jumbled in my mind a little bit until it settled in, So maybe have a recap for that kind of interaction and what you saw, the thinking of a lot of people out there and kind of how you can hone that in the direction of what GTEN does.
Well, our stuff is mostly forward-looking, okay? So what we do is help people position themselves so that can't happen, okay? And so the way, I don't know what his situation was, exactly, he didn't get into it, but whatever he's going to court for tomorrow. But if it was a ticket, if he's in California or certain states, it's probably just a ticket for marijuana, right? And he's going into court on that. Well, a ticket is just commercial paper. Okay, it's ruled under the Uniform Commercial Code, the UCC. And if I get a ticket for anything, I've set myself up in a position where, it's not the person. So they issue a ticket to the person, right? And I just send them a refused for cause letter within 72 hours that says I don't accept it. They're making a commercial offer. That's all it is. They know it. Colorably, they may, it may look like, a court summons or whatever, but really it's just a commercial offer. And if you understand how, the courts are ruled by the UCC these days and how everything's just commercial, everything's just commerce and everything's just an offer, then you understand that by the UCC, their same code they're using, the offer, you don't have an obligation to accept the offer. So within 72 hours, I just send a notice of refusal for cause, and it's over. I don't go to court. So, for example, I went to Burning Man this year, as I usually do, and the day before Burning Man, I decided I would get some of my work done and load up the roof of my Explorer with dusty tents and table and bikes and things from under the house. Look like they just came straight off the dusty playa because they did last year and they haven't been touched since. So I put all this stuff up on top of my car, and I go out to a friend's place, maybe 20 minutes away. And we're coming back at night in the dark, and I got pulled over for speeding. Now, I don't have plates on my car, and I don't operate with a driver's license, and I don't use corporate insurance. My liability is privately bonded through a private trust and a surety trust. So I don't have any of the three triumvirate that draw me into their jurisdiction, right? License, registration, insurance. The three documents any cop wants to see. So they gave me a ticket, $1,000, and that was for speeding plus all of these other things. No registration, no insurance, etc. So $1,000 ticket, nice thing to get, right? Everybody loves that. It's a pretty high one for a traffic citation. And great, okay, give me the ticket. They gave me all the field sobriety tests, and they wanted to search the car because that's their prize, right? They figure anyone going to Burning Man probably got drugs in the car, so they're looking for the big ticket bust, right? And first off, I don't consent to searches, not without a warrant, and that stops them right there, right, on that issue, right? And so all they can do really is decide are they going to throw me in jail or are they going to issue a ticket. And they decide to issue a ticket, which is my preference. I don't like to go to jail for 3 days when I want to be enjoying myself out on the playa at Burning Man. So I was glad when they gave me the ticket. Didn't matter what the number was on it. Didn't matter what it was for. Now I know, okay, we've gone into the realm of true fiction here. It's just commercial paper. Now my response wouldn't work if I had, if they had jurisdiction, if they had, if I had agreed to any of the contracts that this would be a derivative of, such as license, registration, or insurance. But because I didn't present any of that to them and I don't have any of that, the ticket's meaningless. It's a commercial offer. It is a derivative. It is something based on a contract, right? And they're used to writing tickets that are based on the agreement that your driver's license or your registration or doing business in the U.S., such as commercial insurance, would be a command performance or create the need for me to respond to this ticket. Instead, it's just a meaningless commercial paper because of the position that I'm in as a free people instead of operating under the person with contracts, right? So all I did was refuse it for cause, send it to the court, and that's that. And I'm quite certain it's gone from the records. I'm sure the court clerk looked at it and looked into it and said, okay, and it's gone. Now I haven't looked back to see if it's gone, but I've done this many times. I haven't used my person since 2009. My driver's license that I once had was canceled by administrative procedure with the state, and I don't register anything. I don't agree to any split title on anything. So they don't have me in their jurisdiction. Therefore, there's no contract, and their commercial paper is meaningless. All I do is point it out to them. I've done this, half a dozen times over the years, and whenever I get stopped again, they don't have bench warrants for me or outstanding anything. They don't find anything on me. So there it is. So and I like to put the little comment on the refusal for cause that I apologize that this wasn't the revenue producing event that the officer was hoping for. Good luck in the collections in the future. Cease and desist from collecting on this.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for bringing that home to our listeners, and really, because people have a hard time understanding with your work, like, how does this play out in the day-to-day? And thank you for taking, an experience that a lot of people can relate to. Like, they want to go to the festivals and they want to have a good time, and they absolutely understand the gauntlet in front of them. And they sure would have a lot better time on the playa if they knew they were going to get through there simply or have a 3-day wait.
Yeah, we see so many people pulled over. And this is the second time, basically on the way to Burning Man, that I've been pulled over with them wanting to search the car. And I've got it for a number of years, but twice I've been stopped and they want to search the car. And there are usually, a bunch of other cars that are actually being searched. And I feel so sorry for those people because they just don't know. They've consented. There's no reason anyone should be getting in your car without a warrant. And the cops know it, but they get your consent. And they do it because you consent to it. You give them permission unwittingly. And, we offered actually to Burning Man organization to create a course for burners, and got a little bit of response, but then they dropped it and they didn't take us up on it. Now, Dave Bryson here on the call has offered that he'd like something similar, or maybe something even a little more broad-reaching, all-encompassing for his folks, for his event, and for Evolve Fest and for Evolve Quest. And so we're looking at how we might make our information available to his crowd as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, I went to his event this last year, and he dropped off the call early, and I haven't heard from him a text or anything. So I don't know what's up with him. He might be having a phone issue. The first time it's come up, and I know he wanted to be here for this show. So, but I went this last year, and it was oh my God! It's in this beautiful farm and private trust. This beautiful farm, like you'll love it. It's a working farm, up this kind of like, it's just this beautiful place. You would really love the place and the people. I think I did, and really enjoy yourself. So I hope that works out, because it's a great bunch of people, and I'd like to go and hear from you all in person. I really respect your work so much. 2009. I mean, and respect. Like, that's really... So I feel so blessed to have your information that you're sharing tonight. It's really, that's a long string of success, people. Like, when you see the right work, and you're in this work and you get to see it finally, it's rare. And when I saw, PJ and Christian's work, I was like, oh my God, so beautiful. Because we just really want to just be free to live our lives and not have anybody messing with us, and, create what we want to create. And this allows you to, the work that GTEN does, it allows you to kind of create the life you desire in the way you want to do it. And, if you're responsible, if you're respectful to others, you're not going to have any substantial conflicts that you can't handle. That's what I hear out of the work you do, Christian. Would you say that's kind of accurate?
Well, it's certainly been accurate for me. I once you go through the discipline of seeking the source material to really know and understand your stance, right? Then who's going to be able to push you off your mark? You can't unlearn this stuff, And so the actions of the encroaching police state are so colorable. Like, they're dependent on manipulating you in the moment, whether it's the roadside stop or in court or, through paperwork that you get from the IRS or whatever it is that's coming at you. It's always very colorable. It's never what it seems. So, once you learn to, learn sort of the keen eye vision to see right through to what it really is, then it's much easier to deal with. Your life becomes much less stressful. And I take a pretty hard stance on this stuff in terms of not using the person at all. And there's some risks involved. I can get thrown in jail anytime. I mean, I don't play their game, and some hothead cop might not like that, or some judge might not like that. But for me, I can't even, knowing what I know, I can't even play the game that they want me to play, because I see that it's not true. Right? When someone says, are you this person? Like, no, how could I be? Well, this is you right here in the picture, right? On a passport or something. No, that's not me. How could that be me? Isn't that a photograph? Isn't a photograph a likeness? Isn't a photograph a depiction? How can I be a depiction? I like the answers that come into my head in any circumstance are just not at all what people are expecting. And it's because I just see it differently than I used to, and I see where the truth is in it. And I've been in your situation too. I've walked out of court talking with a judge. He was yelling at me as I walked out, and all I could say was, "Good day, sir. My business is concluded here." And I've never looked back. And it doesn't appear as a judgment.
Hey, can you guys hear me now?
Hey, you're on, David. Sorry, man. I had him on mute by accident. I thought he was on the computer, too. Sorry about that, Dave. Yeah, they were talking about coming to your event, man. Please fill him in. My apologies.
Yeah, I've been listening to the whole show, man, so it's all good. So, yeah, I just wanted to address something that you guys were just talking about. Basically, whenever we try to roll in, to their jurisdiction, their domain, it's all about gaslighting, which is a psychological technique. It's a term that comes from, I think, a movie from the 50s called Gaslighting, and basically it's about this husband and wife relationship that kind of devolves where he is basically turning down the brightness of the gas lamps in the house, and she's saying, "Hey, it looks, dimmer in here," and he's kind of like, "What, are you crazy? No, it's not. What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Well, I could swear it was brighter before," and she brings up the lights, and then next thing she knows, it's dim again, and she's saying, "Wait a second here, am I crazy or what? Like, does it look dimmer to you?" And he's like, "No, not at all. You must be nuts." So that's essentially what happens, is that we roll in, and they're going to call us nuts. We bring in paperwork, and they say that's just gobbledygook, because they're going to presume that we don't know what we're talking about, and that's why it's so important to bring substance, on the occasions that we are standing in court. And ideally, we don't want to ever end up in court. We want to handle it, in honor through the proper paperwork, as Christian and PJ were mentioning before. But so I just wanted to address that. Essentially, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's a grand battle of cosmic chess, and we have to outwit the devil. And we are walking into a den of lions. When we walk into a courtroom, or even when we're dealing with police or anybody who's representing Babylon, and they're working from presumption, and we're the crazy people until we can, stand there and intelligently break down every single one of their arguments and ask them for proof of their claim or proof of their assumption, and then, assert and demonstrate to them by the power of demonstration our knowledge of law and of our rights, so that they realize that they're not messing with a typical pushover type. So, we've all got to study law. We've all got to be strong. And just wanted to mention that. And then in reference to bringing some kind of working together, I had mentioned to you earlier, guys, before we got on live, that I'm working with the Ubuntu Liberation Movement out of South Africa. Michael Tellinger has asked us to officially represent Ubuntu in the USA by forming an Ubuntu Party USA, and we're looking to get on the ballot for 2016 or possibly 2020 if we can get it all done by 2016. But what we want to be able to do is to offer through the official political party and through our website the ability for people plugging in to have the best information to begin to assert their rights and get the legal protection that they want, on the private side, and to begin to unplug from Babylon. And what we want to do is we just want to take all the guesswork out of it. We want to break it down into very fundamental, elementary, bite-sized pieces of, these simple steps, and this is what each step means, and this is what we call each step. And you're going to have to, this is how you can see a natural relationship between step 1 and 2, and then 2 and 3. So that basically a person coming in with no knowledge can see that what they're looking for is something that they can get because it makes sense to them, and that they can buy into it, that they can own it and be like, yes, this is what I want to do, and that we're not just offering, our idea or our best guess at what will work, but basically saying, this is the summation of the best knowledge that's out there. We have the people who are proven, we could like, supply all sorts of, case histories, but, we want to plug people into something real, through this political party. and empower them to divest themselves from this system of fraud and deception so that they can stand and radiate their truth like the lions of truth that they are.
Cool. Well, that raises something that Jack did as well when we had the caller on the line, and that is that, some of what we're saying might seem like a foreign language, but I want to address that, the point you just made, that as far as GTEN goes, our education courses start at ground zero every time. So we assume that we have to start from no knowledge when we teach a subject. And so as much as, we may lose some people on some of the topics talking today, I do want to let you know, let the listeners know that we believe, at least, we've designed our courses and believe that we can educate people from 0 to 100. That whether you're experienced in these topics or a newbie to them, if you take one of our courses, you're gonna get all of the foundation as you go. Especially if you take them in order. Especially if you start with private trust education and go from there. Start with our new member special and go from there. We definitely tasked ourselves with the job of educating people who know nothing, and then enhancing also the education of people who know a ton of stuff on the subject. So how much you know going in doesn't matter. The other thing I want to say on that is that Ubuntu is interesting, and I'm glad you're involved in that. And Dave, you've invited us to, or me at least, to some Council of Elders talks. If you want to invite GTEN instead of me personally, that's probably a better way to go.
Okay.
Okay, so if put GTEN on there, and then hopefully one of us will be able to jump in when those things arise, and maybe we should talk offline about what those things are about anyway. But I've had interest in joining in, but the GTEN inbox gets more timely attention than my personal email, and a lot of times I just miss it. It's already done before I even knew it was happening.
Gotcha. I'm going to search for you right now and add you to the proper Google circle there.
Yeah, we're GTEN Trustees, I believe, on Google Plus, so I think you'll find us that way. Okay,
yep,
and then either of us who is available, or both of us, we'll try to sit in on some of those and see what that's about. And the other thing about Ubuntu is I want to just place an idea in your head.
Sure.
And that is the next non-two-party candidate for president, I think, should run on a platform of, isn't it time that the 99% throw out the 1%? Isn't it time that, these guys have had a good run, and look what they've done with it? Isn't this the election phase where we say, okay, these guys don't get to run shit anymore? Who's with me?
Yeah, that's a really powerful catalyst right there, because that's really a meme that is deeply ingrained into our public consciousness, especially in activist and alternative groups, because of the Occupy movement. And as far as I know, it really did permeate our culture at all levels, and even through the mainstream media. I think we'll often refer to the 99%, 1% thing. So I think that's great. Yeah, I think that'll really resonate. People are ready for a change. I think that people understand that by just plugging in new guys into the current system, it's not going to really result in any change, because it's the people who are installed who control the narrative. They're the gatekeepers. They will ultimately determine what it looks like, the story, what story goes out, how it sounds, what it looks like, because they're experts in propaganda, and they study psychology, and they know what they can expect if they convey information in a certain way. And, as Chomsky points out, that the job of the media is to manufacture the consent of the governed. So what we really need to do is to identify even these gatekeepers and supplant them all, get them all out of the picture altogether. We have to not only define the narrative, but we need to control it as well. We need to make sure that our communications are going out there, pristine and not messed with in any way, not reshaped or retold through somebody else's interpretive lens, but that we can really communicate the power and authenticity of the original vision as it's coming to us collectively from a source of inspiration that is higher than us, but that comes through us. So I agree. I think that's a great platform. Isn't it time to get rid of the 99%? They have proven that they are not competent.
The 1%
to fulfill. I'm sorry. They're not competent to fulfill the duties for which they have been elected and put into the public trust. Therefore, we give them a vote of no confidence, and we're going to start fresh and new. I think that really resonates with people.
Right, and you can give the examples of Sweden and Iceland. Sweden's an 8-party system. It's one of the most successfully run countries in the world with the highest, vote of happiness of people. It's not perfect, but it's an 8-party system. They don't have an illusion of choice of 2 parties funded by the same people. It isn't a preconceived notion that one of their guys, one of the 1% guys, is going to be in, and they really, they either don't care which one or they've funded each one enough that they control them both. So isn't it time we had more than a 2-party system? And if we're going to have a third party that's viable in this country, it's going to be on the platform that the 1%ers' reign is over. They've proven that the illusion of choice, 2 parties don't ever present, whether it's Democrat or Republican, they don't ever present new, the right solutions. They just keep doing the same thing. So how about a new option?
And I'm wondering how, it's got to be such a sea change. It's got to be so comprehensive and really addressing so many critical points, like even dealing with die-bolt voting machines, like getting independent parties involved as part of the solution, but then, they can still control the voting. So, I'm still trying to figure out what is the most simple and elegant way of essentially, first, I feel like we have to be creatively subversive to really show the vulnerability of the system that's built on fraud and to demonstrate it as such so that, people of average intelligence can realize that they have been duped and lied to and have been defrauded and that they have a right to lawful remedy. So if we can communicate that, it needs to all happen at once. We need to recognize, hey, if we just do a third party or, independent, that's not going to fix it because we still have these damn voting machines which they're just going to rig anyway. So we need to come up with, in a sense, a fail-proof and a foolproof system that cannot be fucked with by the elite. That's kind of what I'm working on right now, is to try to figure out how that's going to look.
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma. Good luck.
Thank you, man. Hey, man, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, I think it's great.
We respect you for doing it, man. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, if I voted, and I don't because I don't use my public person for anything, I don't have a public person anymore in my mind. If I voted, I would vote for any candidate on any platform, no matter what, just as a protest vote, if their fundamental platform looked something like, isn't it time we got the 1%ers out of control because look how much they're screwing everything up. So, vote for change, vote for the protest vote. That would get my vote. That would get my vote. I don't care if it's a socialist, a libertarian, I don't care. That would get my vote.
Yeah. There's that. We would have to deal with making all forms of lobbying absolutely illegal because it's so obviously, abused for the purposes of bribery. That's got to go. Corporate personhood has got to go. Like, to me, that's number one. Like, you know, if I was president and I was, you know, giving executive orders which are not even lawful, but if I was just in my fantasy mindset right now, like my first order of business would to make corporate personhood like a felony offense, like dissolving all corporate structures that are based upon corporate personhood. And the reason why it's a moral issue, because corporate personhood is really at the root of all social evil, because it allows a legitimate or a legal, if not lawful, a legal means by which men can harm others without taking personal responsibility.
Right, zero accountability.
And that's just too much of a temptation in a world driven by money and greed, you know. I love Ubuntu's whole idea of getting beyond the money paradigm altogether, although that's a mind bender for most people. And I've gotten to the point where, like, I don't even try to explain it. I just tell people you have to read the book. You have to see the program as a comprehensive whole, because, you know, I'm not going to sit here and convince you in a 10-minute conversation that a world without money can actually flourish and work. And no, it's not socialism, and there's no centralized government, and there's no redistribution of wealth. It's really a higher spiritual concept that we believe they're all moving into. And, you know, a lot of people are there already. A lot of people are feeling it, but it's something that we can do together as a, you know, global planetary family.
I love it. Yep.
So let me ask you guys a question. Are you guys also Order of Merchants, or are you connected with them?
Neither. We like Order of Merchants. Zach and Zach's a friend of ours and a very smart guy, and for, you know, certain things such as debt elimination, they're sort of at the leading edge of the game. So, you know, recommend them, but we're not connected in any business way or through trusts or anything. Zach's a friend, and we, you know, we count him among our smartest, most capable friends.
Cool. Yeah, I like some of the art they throw out there, where they kind of break down these, you know, these legal terms having to do with commerce and you know, merchant law to make it accessible in a visual way. So I really dig what they're doing out there.
Yeah, I think they're a good resource. They're in a very different territory than we are, and they are a source for debt elimination. So if that's something that's you know, Jack, you may want to connect with Zach on that, and some of your folks may want to look into Order of Merchants as well. I don't think.
Great. I've never completed my learning, is the way I look at it. I am always looking for good information. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, well, Zach's the same. He's like us. He just researches all the time. He does what we do.
Yeah, that's how you get them. I mean, they're making claims, you know, and there's a million laws out there. They can't follow them all, so it's actually kind of easy. Enforcement's always the issue, and strategy, and you know, it's always great to hear from, you know, other minds and the way they solve an issue. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I notice we're kind of getting, you know, near at the end of our 2-hour thing here, and just want to throw it out to everybody who's here. You know, if there's anything else we need to cover, you know, before we conclude this really, truly awesome show.
Well, administrative justice starts in January, or we may push it to February because my laptop got a drink spilled in the keyboard, and I haven't had a laptop for a month. So we may be pushing it back a little bit, but early in the new year, administrative justice begins, and that right now is available at significantly reduced cost to participants. So you may want to check out the special that's going on right now at GTEN.org on administrative justice. It goes up in cost on some Saturday night at midnight, and then again in January. So there's there's a little bit of a time incentive there to get signed up. Worth looking at.
Definitely. To our listeners, just listen to the archive. Our time goes over. It's fine. It gets archived, but I just want to tell our listeners that before we get off there. David, anything on your mind to bring up before we close off the show?
No, I'm good to go. I'm happy with everything that we covered tonight, and thank these guys for coming on with us again, and look forward to another time in the future.
Yeah, I'm gonna be taking the course with them and going through some of the processes. So I want to throw that out there too to our listeners. So we want to kind of make this a series over time where maybe some of our listeners can go through the seminar too and share, and we're trying to get the word out about what works. So it's one thing that for an expert to come out here, it's quote unquote whatever. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm just saying, but it's another thing for people to hear. Oh, hey, this happened to me, and I was able to do it. So please, go through this process with these amazing educators, people, and come back on the show and share your experience, because that's how we make a change. We do it together. So that's one thing I just wanted to throw out there about that too.
Yeah, that's cool. We'll be glad to have you as a participating member in that course, and we'll be showing in that course the actual documents, examples. How I canceled the driver's license with the state ab initio, voided it ab initio, so that it doesn't exist anymore. How I'll probably throw in the way I canceled or refused to cause the $1,000 ticket I got back in August, and things like that. You see hard examples of what works and how you would structure them, and then we'll cover the source information on why they work, and what the foundation is for that.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Once again, thanks for being on the show. We look forward to having you back. I know everybody that's listening is going to be looking into that seminar. Please, look at their other training too. I've done some of it. I just want to let you know it's of the highest caliber, everyone. So please join them. If you want to really do this work and not waste some time in areas that just don't get traction, want to go right to the source, that's what they do. They go to the source, and that's where they expand their knowledge from. So please join them, people. Thanks for joining us again. PJ Christian from GTEN.org, David Bryson from EvolveFest, my co-host. Thanks for everyone for being here, our callers, our listeners. Next week we're going to have a great show, so please listen into that. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank
you. Thank you, Jack.
All right. Have a good night. Bye-bye.